There are men who walk into a room and immediately capture attention with their words, but then there are others who don't speak at all. They just sit there, still, grounded, unhurried, and yet a woman can't help but wonder what's on his mind. It's not about how he looks, it's something else, something deeply, quietly masculine, a presence that speaks without saying a word, that doesn't need to touch, doesn't need to try, doesn't need to prove anything, just being there, whole, solid, unshaken. And you think a woman will tell you directly when she wants to get closer? Not always, because when real feelings begin to stir, she rarely speaks them outright. Instead, she asks simple questions, playful, light, almost casual. But if you're paying attention, really tuned in, you'll realize those questions aren't really questions. They're signals, invitations, wrapped in a look, carried in a tone of voice, born from a curiosity she hasn't yet named. She won't say, "I want you," but she'll open space, gentle, slow, full of emotion, not to test you, but to see if you can feel it, if you're steady enough to stay, not rushing forward, not backing away. That's who this video is for. The man who's done chasing what's fleeting, who's now seeking something real, a closeness that makes both people feel chosen, not pursued. This isn't about tricks or strategies. It's about presence, about becoming the kind of man whose silence makes her want to stay without needing to be held. Because sometimes what makes a woman lean in isn't that he tried to win her, it's that he knew how to hold a moment, delicate, rare, beautiful, without twisting it with expectations or breaking it from fear of losing control. Question 1. Are you going home alone tonight? There are questions that aren't asked to be answered, but to feel how you respond. She won't ask it when the room is still full of laughter, but in the quieter moment, after the noise has settled, when the conversation slows, when the lights in the cafe grow softer, you turn to her and her eyes are no longer playful. Instead, they reach towards something more private, still gentle, still keeping a safe distance. Then, in a voice so soft, you have to really listen to catch it, she asks, "Are you going home alone tonight?" It sounds simple, but if you've lived enough, you won't answer too quickly, because you know this isn't just a question. It's a door that's just barely opened. Step too fast, and it closes. Wait too long, and the moment fades. What she really wants to know isn't whether someone's waiting at your place. It's whether the space you go home to feels safe enough for someone to enter without feeling like a stranger. Too many men miss this. They answer on impulse, either with a plain, "Yeah, alone," or with a teasing, "Why? You want to come with me?" One is too shallow, the other too quick. Both miss the moment entirely, because women aren't afraid of solitude. They're afraid of a lack of sensitivity. If you're steady enough, you won't avoid the question, but you won't chase it either. You'll hold her gaze with quiet ease, and you'll let the silence stay a little longer. Maybe you'll smile, pause, then say, "I'm used to quiet at the end of the day," but sometimes having someone to sit with, talk a little, sounds like something worth thinking about. It's not an invitation, and it's not a rejection. It's a presence that doesn't pull her in, doesn't push her away, but if she wants to step closer, she'll feel free to. Maybe she won't say anything else, but if you're paying attention, you'll feel the air shift, just slightly, from respectful to curious, from casual to something more open, because women don't judge you by where you live. They sense how you hold that space, whether it's private enough, warm enough, still enough for them to want to stay. Sometimes, what makes a woman stay isn't that you asked her to, but that she can feel it You're not lonely. You've simply learned how to be alone, peacefully, fully, and now you're ready to share that stillness with someone who's worth it. That question isn't a test. It's a quiet knock to see whether your life is hollow or whether you've been keeping a space, deep, calm, intentional, where someone could walk in, not as a guest, but as someone quietly, silently welcomed. And if, in that moment, you don't try to impress her, don't try to say the perfect thing, but simply be there, real, present, unshaken, then that stillness itself, more than any line you could say, will be the reason she wants to stay longer than you ever expected. Question 2. Was there ever a love you couldn't forget? Some questions aren't asked to be answered. They're asked to listen to how you touch your own memories. She doesn't need a full story. She's listening for something else. How does that memory still live inside you? Women have a sense, a quiet intuition. They don't need your details. Just a pause in your eyes, a subtle softening in your voice, a breath that falls slightly out of rhythm. That's all it takes for her to feel you've loved before, you've been hurt, and she wants to know how you've walked through it, not to judge, but to see if, behind all that calm, there still exists a part of you that's truly alive. The mistake many men make is brushing the past away. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. But a man who once loved deeply doesn't forget so easily, not because he's stuck, but because he doesn't need to deny. To him, the past isn't a burden, it's a witness, a quiet record of a journey, walked through without avoidance, lived without regret. Stoic philosophy never asks you to forget, it asks you to accept. You can't control what already happened, but you can choose how to live with it. A man who's been wounded and still carries peace is a man who has learned how to sit with himself without performing, without using his pain as armor. He simply is, present, deep, and unshaken. And if you choose to answer, let that answer be honest, but brief. Sometimes all it takes is one line, yes, one person, nothing more, because what she's listening for isn't in the story. It's in your presence as you speak. Are you still? Are you free? Or is the past still holding the reins? For the Stoic man, the hardest thing isn't resisting desire. It's refusing to let desire lead. You can long for someone, but not let that longing define you. You can be wanted, but never let that wanting become your worth. A free man is someone who knows what he wants, but isn't ruled by it. Real magnetism doesn't come from conquering her. It comes from not needing to. That's the difference between a man with depth and someone just trying to prove something. A man living with stoic strength doesn't chase pleasure, doesn't beg for validation, and never defines his worth by whether or not someone chooses him. Old wounds don't need to be erased. They only need to be seen, without defense, without denial. And when you're brave enough to stand in that honest light, you don't just forgive your past, you begin to live free from it. And if one day she asks you that question, not to test you, but to feel you, know that you don't have to explain much. You only need to let her see, in your eyes, a man who once broke, but learned how not to fall apart. Question 3. Has there ever been a film that truly moved you? Some questions sound casual, even random, but if you're paying attention, you'll realize she's trying to move closer, not through a bold look, not through a touch that crosses a line, but through a simple question: has there ever been a film that truly moved you? It sounds like a question about preferences, but it's not. She's quietly looking for a crack in the emotional armor you wear. She doesn't care what genre you like. What she's trying to see is whether something still lives in you, something that makes your heart stir, even just a little. Women don't need you to open up about every scar. One real moment is enough. A sudden silence, a glance that hesitates, a voice that lowers ever so slightly. That's all it takes for her to know your heart isn't completely closed. That question usually comes on quiet evenings, when the chatter fades, when two people begin to listen more than they speak. It's offered like a leaf falling soft, soundless, but it carries more weight than it seems, and yet so many men miss it, not because they're cold, but because they've grown used to being hardened. They brush the moment off, name an action movie and move on, as if emotions don't matter. Some even say lightly, "Movies don't really move me." It sounds harmless, but to her, it says something else. You've locked away the most human part of yourself. But if, in that moment, you pause for just a second, let your breath slow, and answer, not from memory, but from feeling, everything might change. Maybe you mention the pursuit of happiness, and that scene where the father holds his son while they sleep in a subway bathroom. You didn't cry, but something moved inside you on the way out of the theater, a tiredness you hadn't realized you'd been carrying. Or maybe you recall her, and the moment Theodore writes a letter to his ex. You couldn't finish the scene, not because it was too sad, but because you understood. Some apologies come too late, but they still need to be spoken, not to bring someone back, but to set yourself free. You don't need a perfect story, just something true. She's not listening for the plot. She's listening to you, how your voice dips when the memory returns, how your eyes wander as you speak, how your rhythm breaks at the exact part your heart once did too. Stoicism doesn't ask you to deny emotion. It teaches you to master it, to see it, feel it, but not be ruled by it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A hardened soul can birth nothing of worth. A man with depth doesn't need to reveal everything. But if nothing moves you anymore, that's more frightening than anything else." And if you can answer her question, not with cleverness, not with pride, but with one moment that reminded you you're still alive, then maybe you won't need to win her over with anything else. Because right then, she'll see you, not through your words, not through your logic, but through what still breathes inside your heart. Question 4. Do you enjoy quiet afternoons, just sitting together, doing nothing? Some afternoons pass so slowly, it feels like the whole world has paused. The sunlight is soft, the breeze only gentle enough to stir a few strands of hair, and two people sit side by side, not doing anything, not saying much. It's in those quiet hours that she might ask, "Do you enjoy quiet afternoons, just sitting together, doing nothing?" It sounds like a casual invitation, but what she's really wondering is, can you truly be present, not just physically there, but fully there? Can you sit beside her without needing to talk, without needing to entertain, without needing to prove anything? Just sit with her and with yourself. Women can sense this. When a man can't sit still in silence, it's often because he's running from something inside. Maybe it's emptiness, maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's the fear of being invisible when he's not actively doing something. And when she asks, she's not trying to figure out if you're introverted or outgoing. She simply wants to know, is there space inside you that she can step into without being swallowed? Many men miss this. They think she's bored, that she wants something to do, so they jump up, suggest an activity, fill the air with noise. But the more they try to fill the space, the more they reveal the void within. Men are taught from a young age that they must always be doing, producing, performing, proving. Otherwise, They're useless. But sometimes, in those slow, quiet afternoons, people see each other most clearly, like a lake that only reflects the sky when it's still, like a mind that only sees itself clearly when it stops struggling to impress even itself. A man who's lived, who's grown quiet inside, won't see those silent minutes as a waste. He knows being present is enough. No need for grand words, no need to move, or act, or explain, because with the right person, peace itself is the bond. Stoicism doesn't ask you to live slowly. It asks you to live here, not swept away, not holding on. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Only when the mind is still can we see ourselves clearly." And the truth is, women don't fall in love with what you do. They fall in love when, beside you, they feel they don't have to do anything and still feel completely themselves. And if, in that moment, you simply smile, not rushing to reply, and say softly, "If the person sitting next to me feels right, then sitting still is something I'd want to stretch just a little longer," then maybe she won't need anything else to believe she's sitting beside a man who is truly present. Question 5. Do you feel comfortable visiting a woman's home without needing a reason? Some questions are whispered so softly, it feels like she's asking herself more than she's asking you, but in truth, she's watching. She's not looking for an explanation. She's not even waiting for a reaction. She simply wants to know, are you here for her? Or is there something else you're chasing? Many men, when stepping into a woman's space, carry unspoken assumptions. Some try too hard to act casual, as if everything is just natural. Others are polite to the point of distance. But on either extreme, one truth shows itself. They're not fully present. They're performing, holding up a version of themselves they think they need to be. She notices it all, the smallest things, the way you place your shoes, the way your eyes move around the room, the way you sit down, the way you stay quiet, or throw out words just to fill the silence. Every gesture is a signal, not to be judged, but to be felt. She's sensing, are you really here, or just waiting for something to happen? To a woman, some men bring tension the moment they arrive, even if they haven't done a thing. It's as if their very presence demands a defense. But then there are others, men who arrive lightly. They don't make anyone brace themselves. They don't bring pressure. They don't carry expectations. They show up like a breath of air, and that's what makes them real. Stoicism doesn't teach you to control the setting. It teaches you to control yourself, to move without being ruled by desire or insecurity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Live as if every act is a meaningful choice, not because someone forces you, and not because you need to control the outcome. When you can be fully present anywhere without bringing expectation, you are living free of the need to impress. That woman doesn't need you to be exciting, charming, or special. What she's hoping to feel is simple, that you don't bring weight into her space, that you can enter her world without making her brace herself, without asking her to become a more pleasing version of who she is. Women sense this deeply. They feel eyes that linger too long, words that are too perfect, and gestures that seem polite, but only out of fear of intimacy, not out of respect. Some men come into a room with a goal. Others enter as if they already belonged there, not because of familiarity, but because their inner peace carries no sharp edges. And women feel that. Comfort doesn't come from the couch you sit on. It comes from the way you show up. If your presence holds no demand, if your energy is wide and still, asking for nothing to happen, then that calm becomes the softness in the room. And if that day held nothing special, if you simply sat for a while, shared a few words, and said goodbye with a calm look, then that moment might stay with her longer than you'll ever know, not because you left a mark, but because you didn't try to. Some first meetings don't leave events, they leave a feeling. This man, I could let him be close, not because he's interesting, but because he didn't make me try to feel safe. Question 6. What if I don't feel like going home early tonight? Some evenings don't need many words, but in a slowed glance, a softened voice, and a silence just long enough, something unnamed begins to take shape between two people, and then she asks, in a voice so quiet it almost feels like a joke, "What if I don't feel like going home early tonight?" This isn't a question born from desire. It isn't a test either. It's a gentle opening, a delicate rhythm shared between two people, honest and bare, where she's quietly watching. Can you stay with the feeling without letting it take over? Or will you rush past it, simply because you can't bear the ambiguity? Too often, men react too quickly. One lunges forward, the other hides behind politeness, and both lose the moment, because what she truly wants isn't a reaction, it's presence. She wants to know, can you stay rooted when things aren't certain, without expectation, without retreat, without the need to control? A man who's lived doesn't rush to say anything. He simply stays, feels, and if he does speak, it's with something grounded, respectful, and real. I don't know what's on your mind, but if you stay, let it be a night that, come morning, we both smile when we remember it. It's not an invitation, and it's not a rejection. It's the kind of presence that protects the moment without holding it hostage. Silence isn't always avoidance. Sometimes, the ability to keep still between two people is the most certain thing you can offer. When you don't need something to happen to feel valuable, you no longer place that weight on the person in front of you. She doesn't need to guess your expectations. She doesn't need to act just right or move close enough. And that feeling of not being led, not being pushed, that's what makes her feel safe. There are truths that Stoicism doesn't speak aloud. They live in the way you show up, not ruled by desire, not afraid of the feeling that's quietly rising. You don't choose what's right because it will be seen. You choose it because you believe in it. And sometimes, that's all it takes for someone to feel deeply respected, even when they're not being held. When a woman asks you a question like that, she doesn't know exactly what will happen, but she trusts enough to open a small space, just enough for you to enter. And if you can stay calmly, without moving forward or stepping back, then you won't need another clever line. That stillness is your answer. She may still go home that night, but if she leaves feeling unhurried, untested, and free of the pressure to be chosen, then maybe, next time, she won't need to ask, because she'll already know, with you, she can be herself, and still be welcome to stay. Question 7. Do you believe that some touches don't need to be explained? There are moments when two people sit in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because everything is being felt on another level, slower, deeper, beyond words. When the space between them narrows to just a few centimeters, when the air itself seems to shift color, and in that stillness, she gently places her hand on you, lightly, without invitation, without expectation, just a touch. And then she asks, do you believe that some touches don't need to be explained? This isn't a question that needs an answer. It's like a quiet wave gliding across the surface of emotion to see if you are truly present. Many men respond with their minds, trying to interpret, define, or retreat the moment it feels too uncertain. But not every moment needs to be understood. Some are meant to be lived, whole, unbroken, without needing to name what they are. She's not asking for clarity. She's asking if you can stay in that moment with her, calm, honest, and without needing to know what comes next. A man with experience doesn't rush. He doesn't cling. He doesn't pull away. Maybe he simply turns his hand slightly, gently interlocking his fingers with hers, without a word, not leading, not hinting, just being there, just enough for her to feel, you're here, and you feel this too. A touch without possession, without control, without the need for return. A touch that lands perfectly, like presence itself. Not too much, not too little. There are times when awareness doesn't come from analyzing what's right. It comes from holding the silence long enough to honor it, not out of indifference, but out of respect, not from distance, but from deep empathy. And sometimes the truest strength lies in allowing something beautiful to stay just as it is, without the need to turn it into something else. That question isn't a test. She's simply asking, can you touch without taking, feel without holding? If you can, then, in her eyes, you're not just present, you are the man who allows her to stay completely herself, without needing to hide. Maybe afterward, the two of you sit quietly again, as if nothing happened. But if, in that silence, she feels deeply felt, not judged, not labeled, then that single touch becomes a memory, not because you did something, but because you didn't need to. And in a world that insists on labeling every moment, sometimes it's the ones that ask for no explanation that go straight to the heart. 7 questions. They may sound simple, but each one holds a quiet frequency, subtle, patient, intentional. They aren't random tests, and they're not open invitations. They are moments when a woman is watching you, not with her eyes, but with something deeper, her intuition. If you're still enough not to react, if you're present enough not to perform, then you've already stepped into connection without having to chase it. Because when a man can feel what hasn't been said, when he can remain grounded inside a moment that still holds no name, he doesn't need to grab for attention. His very presence is the answer. You might not say anything impressive, you might not do anything at all, but if your presence is true, steady, and quiet, it will leave behind more than any carefully chosen words ever could. Because connection isn't built on actions you've rehearsed. It lives in the sincerity of doing nothing and still being fully there. That's when a woman no longer needs to guess. She no longer needs to protect herself. She no longer needs to test. She just needs to breathe. And you are the one who made her feel like she could. But ask yourself honestly, are you the man who moves her heart? Or just the one she's watching to see how you'll respond? Are you present, or just playing the version of yourself you think she'll like? Can you sit beside her without a reason, or are you always carrying an unspoken agenda behind every kind gesture? That's the difference between the man who passes through and the man who stays. If you've felt something during this journey, don't keep it to yourself. Out there are men walking with the same restlessness you used to carry. Maybe they're wondering why things still feel off, even when they've done everything right. Maybe they don't lack knowledge, they just lack the stillness to feel, instead of react. And maybe what you've just realized is exactly what they've been waiting to hear. So send this video to a brother you respect, someone you want to walk further with, deeper, more honestly. And if you feel ready to take the next step on the path of becoming a man who doesn't rush, doesn't cling, doesn't perform, then stay. Because this is only the beginning. If your presence is strong enough, you don't have to say a word, and you'll still be remembered.